Well, I have a confession to make. My wife and my daughter don't even know this, so it's a really juicy one probably. On October 2nd, it was a Tuesday, I was in the second day of my drive to Texas after retiring, and it was a beautiful day, and somewhere I was on I-44 between Tulsa and Oklahoma City. There was some music on the radio, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just started crying. I'm in the car by myself, and you know, I've gotten choked up at times before, and you know that, but I just started crying. And so for several miles, I'm just crying. And I'm not exactly sure why. It wasn't like there was a country music song on where the guy had his pickup truck stolen and his dog ran away. It wasn't anything like that. I just began to cry. And I think I've found that as I've gotten older, my emotions are a little more on edge. I wouldn't say I was emotionally unstable yet, but my emotions have gotten on edge. And I tell you that just simply because if that ever happens here, just bear with me, grab me a Kleenex, hang in there with me, I'll get through it, okay? So I want to share that with you. And because I have a request of all of us in just a minute, and I really need you to do that because considering what I just mentioned, you wouldn't want me to go there in case nobody did my request. So in just a minute, I want you to do this for me. And I'll tell you when to start. But what I would like to do is for everybody who can, in just a second, to stand, and within basically arm's length of where you are, I want you to welcome 3 people, okay? Even if you know them already. And this is what I would like you to say. I would like you to say, I'm really glad you're here today. Now, I want you to say it with some feeling, okay? I don't want you to do like, well, I'm really glad you're here today, or I'm really glad you're here today. No, that's not going to work. And if you don't know the person, I need you to say your first name. So if it were me, I would say, hi, I'm Tim. I'm really glad you're here today. Now, only 3 of us here can do that, I think, and that's me and Tim Seifert and Tim Burton. You have to put your own name in there instead of Tim, okay? Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So what I would like you to do then is once you've done that with those 3 people, just sit down. And that way I'll know when we can move on. And there's a purpose to this, okay? So trust me, there's a purpose. So if you can stand, I would appreciate you doing that. So let's stand and take a second, shake their hand, give them a hug, but I'm really glad you're here today, and introduce yourself. I'm really glad you're here today. Larry, really glad you're here today. Cameron, you handsome man, I'm really glad you're here today. Okay, don't be talking about the ball game yesterday or what's for dinner. You're good. So, I just want to clarify, what we just did will not be just a one-time thing. In fact, we'll do it from time to time. It may not be every Sunday, but we are going to practice this moving forward because one of the things that I really want us to focus on and what my thoughts are this morning, I want 2020 to be an emphasis on kindness and encouragement and welcoming. And really the point of welcoming, as I thought about this, no one should ever enter this auditorium, whether they are a regular member or visitor, and leave without feeling welcome. Welcoming is important. The fact that we're together as a church family is important. And so I really want us to get into that habit, if you will, moving forward. And so we'll talk a bit about that. And really what we just mentioned in Scott's reading in Matthew 22 had to do with, Jesus answering that question, and he basically said, this is how, you are to be. You're to love the Lord with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And who doesn't want to be welcomed, to be encouraged, to have kindness shown to them? And so we're going to talk today a little bit about won't you be my neighbor, and how we can be neighborly, if you will, in 2020. I think all of us deep down would like to feel valued. We'd like to feel important and appreciated, cared for, and loved. My personal goal then, and my challenge for this year for all of us, myself included, is to try to look at 2020 as an opportunity for us to become more neighborly, if you will. And it's very simple. We just did something very simple, and hopefully it wasn't too uncomfortable. It can be as simple as seeing someone and saying, have a nice day, or I really appreciate what you did, or I appreciate you, or you open the door for someone. I find that more people are doing that the older I get. They feel sorry for me, I think, but I see that. But if you open the door for someone and just say, have a nice day. Just some word of kindness, if you will. If you have a student, and many of our members here work in schools, to just say to them, hey, you did a great job on your project or your test or that paper you wrote. Or if we have our students in our homes, compliment them, encourage them for what they did. Maybe it's a cashier at a store, and we've all been in line, and sometimes we hear cashiers complain about just about anything. So what happens if we get up there and say, I couldn't help but overhear you're not having a very good day. I'm going to pray for you that your day gets better. Wow. Just a quick word of encouragement to that person. And maybe it's a coworker, and we ask them, is there anything I can do to help you out with that, whatever that is? A word of encouragement. During God's Hand Gift Shop, I was witness to Brett Hagerman out in the hallway as people were standing in line, and he was talking with them and welcoming our guests, but he was also asking them if he could pray with them. I thought, wow, what an impact that would have on those people while they were waiting in line. So I thought about that, and I would say we can do so many other things. We can send a text message to just say, hey, I'm thinking about you today. And if you don't text, maybe you email. So you send an email and just say, hope you're having a great day. And if you don't email, we all can send a card. If you don't have a stamp, then use the phone. If you don't have a chance to get on the phone, go stand on your porch and just wave at the cars that go by and smile. They may think you're emotionally unstable, but at the very least, you might brighten somebody's day. But I want us to focus on being kind and being encouraging. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the article that I have in the Encourager this time. I didn't realize I'm going to have to temper that down a little bit. It looked like a novel when it got printed. I apologize for that. I'll do better. But sorry, Ashley. But one of the things I mentioned is that Kathy and I went and saw the movie recently about Mr. Rogers, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And I was familiar with Mr. Rogers growing up. He was in the Pittsburgh area, and I grew up about an hour and a half away from Pittsburgh, so I knew who he was, I knew about him. I was really wanting to see how he was portrayed in the movie, and I thought the movie was really good. And basically, Fred Rogers, he was someone who demonstrated kindness to anyone he met. He shared encouragement with the people that he met. It was just a part of who he was. And so he had a lot of influence on people, a lot of impact on those people. I think the more that we focus in the coming year on kindness, the more we focus on being encouraging, the more we focus on things like having a positive attitude, I think over the course of time, our outlook on life and our relationship with others and our relationship with one another is going to change. It's going to improve. It's going to become more neighborly. In fact, I think if we continue to do that, we'll get to a point where or things like this where we're complaining about our boss or a coworker, or we're complaining about a neighbor whose leaves blew into our yard, or the driver in front of us at the traffic light that doesn't go when it turns green, or the length of a sermon, or the songs that were picked, or the sock that your child left on the floor, or the casserole that might have been a bit overcooked. Those things will become so foreign to us, even trying to think about them or say them won't even be a part of who we are. Because being neighborly is something that's going to engulf us. It's going to flow out from us. It's going to be more about who we are. Loving our neighbor as ourselves. You might say, well, okay, Tim, that's all well and good, but what good is that really going to do? What good is me saying, have a great day, going to do? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because just a few minutes ago when I said, just greet 3 people, welcome 3 people. Well, here's what I want to challenge myself and all of us to do in 2020. In addition to welcoming someone to worship, what if we committed being kind and encouraging to 3 people every day? That was a commitment that we would make, that in 2020, call it a resolution, call it whatever, but call it a commitment as individuals that in 2020, I'm going to do everything I can to say a word of encouragement or kindness to at least 3 people every day. I guarantee you, Randy Hagerman does a whole lot more than that when he's in the hallways at his school. I just know Randy, and I guarantee you he talks to students and he gives them a word of encouragement probably throughout the day. But we can do it. It's 3 people. It's not very many. And I mentioned how we can do it. Texting, email, face-to-face, the stranger at the store, whatever it might be. So I gave you some examples of what it might look like and what it might sound like. I want us to look at the potential impact that we could have as individuals. And so I'm doing a little math today, mainly because Kaylee's here and she got to go back today. We've got to leave right after to get her to the airport. But this way, because she teaches math, she can check my math, and if I need help, she could help me out with a little bit. So we're doing nothing like algebra or geometry. I can't do that. But here's what I want us to think about. The individual impact in 2020 that we can have. 2020 is a leap year, so there's 366 days. So if you hadn't thought about that and you're looking like, well, you already messed up. No, it's 366 days. So if we take those 3 people that we're going to focus on every day, different 3, doesn't matter, just get to 3. Well, that equals 1,098 people that we could have a potential impact on, even if it's for a brief moment in 2020. Individually, 1,098 people. But I know we've got some overachievers, and I know from a math standpoint this will help, so I rounded up to 1,100. So it's easier to multiply that way. Plus, some of you I know will do more than 3, a couple days a week anyway. So 1,100 people that individually we could possibly have a positive impact on just by being kind, encouraging, and welcoming in 2020. Okay, so what? Glad you asked. We're going to do some more math, okay? And I checked this a few times before, and I didn't have to ask Kaylee. So we're going to consider that 1,100 individually. And so today, for argument's sake, we're going to say 150 people are here. And that includes our children, because I really do believe that we need to teach our children to be kind and encouraging at a very young age. To be kind to their siblings, to be kind to mom and dad, to be kind to their fellow students, their classmates, to be encouraging to their teachers or to the strangers that they meet. And I noticed during God's Hand Gift Shop, again, so many of our young people, our little kids, were helping. They were helping our guests. We need to be teaching them, so they count in that 150. So I don't want us to discount them, and so I want to challenge us as grandparents and as parents to even consider our little children and helping them be kind and encouraging. So I want us to do that. So what could we have as an impact at North Park for 2020? Well, we take that 150 people and we take that times 1,100 individually that we can impact. That's 165,000 people potentially we could bring a little bit of brightness to in 2020. 165,000 people, that's more than live in the city of Rockford. 165,000 people for Little North Park, who's the church here, who's in the middle of Machesney Park. We could have that kind of an impact on 165,000 people. Could you imagine touching somebody's life 165,000 times with some words of kindness, some words of encouragement, just by averaging each of us 3 a day? It could have a huge impact. And that doesn't even take into account the people that are going to see or hear what we're doing, and maybe they're going to be like, well, I can do that. And so maybe they start doing it. It doesn't really take into account those who may be in this number who are overachievers, who 3 isn't enough, or who, the way they work or where they live is such where they come in contact with a lot more people, and maybe in their days they could have even a greater impact. But I don't want you to take my word for it. I don't want you to just say, well, Tim said we should do this. Paul talked about it when he wrote his letter to the Ephesian church. And he really could have written that to the North Park church. And so I want us to take a look at Ephesians 4:29 through 5:2, and just you can see it up there, or you can follow along in your Bible as I read it with you. And again, Paul's writing this, and again, I want you to think of it in terms of math, because he tells us to subtract some things, to get rid of some things. And then he tells us to add some things to our life. He said, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So let's see really what Paul is really talking about. The first things he talks about really are things that are not very neighborly. And he said, get rid of those. He said, get rid of unwholesome talk. There's plenty of that out there. We don't need to be doing that. He said, get rid of bitterness. Subtract that from your life. Subtract anger and rage. Get rid of that. Take it away. Get rid of brawling and slander. Get rid of malice. And I'm not going to define all those. I would encourage you, look those up this week and make sure that they're not part of who you are. And if they are, do what Paul said. Let's get rid of them. Let's subtract them. Because truly, having those things as part of who we are, not very neighborly. But he goes on to do something more. He said, really, here's some things that we need to add to our lives in order to be neighborly, in order to be neighbor to the people that we meet, to that cashier at the store, to that student, to that stranger, to that person in your own home, to the person here in this building, to the person at the pantry, to the person that you just happen to run into that maybe you haven't seen in a long time. He said this, he said, add kindness to who you are. Be kind. He said to be compassionate, to add compassion to your life, to forgive each other, to add that to who you are, to the person you are. And he goes on to say, be imitators of God. And that has a whole lot of stuff in there that we need to add. And then finally he says, live a life of love. Back to Jesus' response in Matthew 22. So really, Paul gives us a formula here for being neighborly in that chapter, in that passage in Ephesians. And you see, positivity is contagious. Encouraging is contagious. Kindness is contagious. But sadly, so is negativity. And there is so much negativity surrounding us in our world, we don't need to contribute anymore to that. We need to get away from that. I want to leave you with a quote that I heard a minister provide while I was in Texas. And it's a reference to baseball, and I know I don't try to use a lot of those, but because I know some people, it's like, oh, another sports quote. But this one was so powerful and fit so well. I hope that not only you'll think about its message, but you'll write it down and be reminded of it, not only today or tomorrow, but throughout 2020, because I think it's that important. Basically, he was talking about how the church needs to be encouraging, about what the church needs to be about. And it's really that life of encouragement. And here's what he said. He said, we don't need a lot of umpires calling balls and strikes. We need a lot of base coaches helping people run. And I really believe that's what we as Christians need to focus on, is helping people run their race, helping them get from point A to point B, helping them, even if they make an out, we tell them, you know what, that's okay, good effort, next time you'll do better, next time you'll get it. Or we say, okay, keep going, head to second, keep going, run your race. Encouragement, not what you did wrong, but helping them do what's right. And I believe that if we will focus on being kind and welcoming and encouraging in 2020, we'll become base coaches. And we'll have that impact on the people that we meet. So my challenge to each one of us here today, and myself included, just be more welcoming. Shower people with love when they come in this building. Be more kind. Be more encouraging in 2020. We're not going to keep score. We're not going to take a show of hands every week and say, well, who got their 21 people this week? We're not going to do that. But I will tell you this. I will tell you that we will see and we will hear how we're doing without keeping score. Because I think if we go out of our way to be more welcoming, if we're more purposeful in demonstrating kindness, and if we're committed to offering more encouragement, our families will see that. Our coworkers will see that. Our neighbors will see that. Our church here will know that we're working on it because they'll see the impact when they're here. And God will know if we're really truly committed to that. You might say, well, Tim, that's all well and good, but what about things like the Great Commission or Acts 2:38 or the good news? Trust me, we're laying the groundwork. Next week, I want to invite you to come back because next week we're going to see where all these things that we talked about today can move us to the next level, because you see, next week's message is going to be the Lord sure does move in mysterious ways if we allow Him to do that in our life. So I want to encourage you to be back next week, but I want to encourage everyone, 3 people a day. 3 people a day. Some type of act of kindness and encouragement as Christians to share that with others. We come to a point in time, if you've been here a long time, you know that we're going to sing a song in just a second. We'll stand and do that, and really that's a song of encouragement. It's an opportunity to encourage people who are here who may decide that they want to enter 2020 as a child of God if they aren't one today. And so if that might be you, then I would welcome you and encourage you. I'll be down here, come on down front, and we can do that. Or see me after, and we can make arrangements for that. Or, you know, encouragement looks a lot of different ways, and maybe you're struggling with something in your life and you just need some prayers or a hug or somebody to just know that every day, if you could get something from somebody that says, hey, I know you're struggling with this, I'm praying for you. We can help you with that as well. Again, 2020, kindness, encouragement, and let's be more welcoming with each other. Let's stand together and sing.